I mean, first of all, Sophie, I feel like I ask myself that often. I mean, I think we all have that kind of moment where we're like, who am I? What was my purpose? Like, I think the hardest part for people is like starting the journey. So it's really just giving yourself the permission to not be perfect. Isn't it funny how your body will tell you? Your body will tell you this doesn't feel right.
Welcome to SheEO with Sophie, the podcast for ambitious women navigating corporate life while creating a career and life that truly lights them up. Whether you're climbing the ladder, pivoting, or redefining what success means to you, know this: you're not alone and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. If you're ready to grow, lead, and thrive, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'm Sophie, and this is SheEO with me. I am delighted to welcome Karen to the SheEO with Sophie podcast today. A woman who has reinvented her career not just once, but multiple times, and who has mastered the art of navigating major transitions. And honestly, I am so intrigued to unpack how she's overcome the challenges with such bold moves. So, hello and welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Sophie. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I'm excited to share with the
Yes, I'm
audience.
so excited for this conversation. So we're just going to dive in like straight away.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go for it. So to kick us off, and to give everyone a little bit of a background, who are you?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I am a storyteller, I think, at heart. And that's really, I think, the thread that has run through my entire life. And I'm talking about since I was a kid. I mean, before I even ever found words, I sang. So I told stories through music. I used to put on little concerts in my living room.
Mhm.
And as I got older, storytelling sort of showed up in different ways. I would write poems as a teenager. I even on one of my first jobs, I remember I used to pierce ears, and in order to calm the nerves of kids, I would grab this teddy bear, and I remember naming it Penelope Schnitzerbaum on the spot and making up stories about her adventures so that the kids could hold them so they wouldn't feel pain. When they got their ears pierced. So, eventually I think that love of storytelling led me to journalism, where I told feature stories and I also told hard news stories. And then from there, that turned into strategy at agencies, helping companies, shape narratives that journalists wanted to tell. And then in pharma, sort of it evolved again. I used these stories to bring business strategy to life and to help motivate people through really high risk, high change opportunities. So I just really think that the through line has always been, I really believe that stories connect us all. And I have built a career that has really followed that instinct.
Yeah. And storytelling is such a underestimated skill to have. I think it's something that's so important, and especially now when we're looking at branding and everything is about having a brand now. It is about
Mhm.
telling a story and getting your
Yes.
story across. Like everyone does it. Look at celebrities, that's how they navigate their careers is this is what I'm projecting. Everything is around a story. So the fact that you've always had that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is like, I tell everyone, even on a personal level, it's important to tell a story. You
Mhm.
can't go from, let's say in high school, you wore goth every day, right?
Yeah.
And then you show up at the high school reunion and you're a yoga pants wearing mom.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that, right?
Mhm.
There's always a story that you need to explain. Otherwise, people are going to fill in their own gaps, which is never good. But I do
Yeah.
agree with you that being a brand is important. And I think
Yeah.
I've carried that through as a journalist. You're a brand. So
Yeah.
when you go out to a restaurant, even when you're not working, you have to remember that you're a brand, and
Mhm.
what you say and what you do in the public matters. So I've carried some of that into my business life.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the journalism piece because
Yeah.
I'm like so interested. You must have some great stories. So what's the best one?
Well, I'll start off by saying there's so many that are very serious, right? Because I
Yeah.
covered feature but hard crimes. But
Mhm.
I have to say, obviously, my best one is going to be a good one. So I used to do this series when I was in Orlando, and it's called Florida on a Tankful. So essentially, that means you highlight pieces of places that you can go on a tank full of gas. So one day I was covering Ripley's Believe It or Not. And for my stand up, which is basically the part where you stand in front of the TV and the reporter sort of appears on camera to help
Mm.
transition the story, I stood next to these really famous fertility statues. And the legend is at Ripley's, believe it or not, that couples from all around the world, like, rub these statues for good luck to get to conceive.
Yeah.
So for
Okay.
whatever reason that day, I could not get my words out, and I did this stand up like 100 times. Ah, and I just kept rubbing these statues, and I really wasn't thinking anything about it. I didn't believe in the statues. Well, fast forward a few months, and at the end of the year, every reporter has to choose their favorite story to rerun
Yeah.
during the holidays, and you say something like, "This is my favorite story and why." So I picked the fertility statue story because, hand down, I'm now pregnant. And I was struggling to
Stop.
conceive. So I hadn't told anybody that. Now, here is the full circle moment. I ended up going into early labor and I watched that story over and over and over again from my hospital room. My son was supposed to be born in March. He came December 26th. So it was very early. But I
Oh,
sat there and
wow.
watched like my favorite story and the panning to the belly started as a silly feature story and it turned into one of the most beautiful ones of my career. Yeah.
Oh my god, you can't even write that. That's
No,
insane.
it was fun. It was really fun. Yeah, and
Oh, that's
you know,
amazing.
yeah,
Well,
he's
at least
older
we know where
now.
to go. Yeah, we know where to go now if you're trying to
Mhm,
conceive.
yes,
Mm,
yeah,
it
go look
works.
at the fertility statues at,
Yeah.
Ripley's, believe it or not.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding. Okay, so journalism,
Mhm,
amazing, very
yeah.
different to, I suppose, some of the other I say careers you've had,
Mhm,
agency leadership, pharma, biotech. You've
yeah.
kind of touched upon it already around storytelling, but is there anything else that really connects these three chapters for you?
I think it's the ability to create emotional connections
Mm,
and that build trust and inspire action through that storytelling, and I think through leadership too. I mean, look, you can see in that ear piercing story that I shared that, and even through my experience, like with mergers and acquisitions,
mm,
I've built trust with people and empowered them through telling stories. And that could
yeah,
be literally, here, little child,
yeah,
I'm going to build trust with you so that you can let me put a needle through your ear. Here, a bunch of people who are concerned about your jobs and about where the company is going. Let's talk about what you need to hear so that you
yeah.
can be motivated and feel good about it. So um, I think that's really been the through line is creating these emotional connections that build trust, through that storytelling.
And if someone's not any good at storytelling, I mean, I'm pretty
Mhm.
average, I'd say. How can I learn to be better?
I tell my daughter this
Mhm,
because she is now in this language arts class that's like accelerated and she's so proud, but she finds it to be a challenge.
mhm.
Just right. Like, I think the hardest part for people is like starting the journey.
Yeah.
But if you say to yourself, I'm not going to judge, I'm just going to write, it just like things start to come to life, right? It's when you
Yeah.
put the pressure on yourself, like, oh, the beginning of the story has to be amazing. The story has to be
Mhm.
just right. I mean, some of the best things that have happened to me have been me writing. And I write pieces and then I close the book and I write another piece, I close the book. And then it's the fourth iteration that I'm like, this is the story. So
Yeah.
it's really just giving yourself the permission to not be perfect.
Yeah. Mm.
And you will find that you have a cool story there.
Yeah.
And then the other tip I would say is like try to be very vivid.
Okay.
Um, just try to be very vivid. Give people a sense of what things, and this is maybe not in business, but in general, like give people a sense of like what it smells like, what it looked like, what it felt like, what your body felt like. All these things bring people
Mm.
closer to you.
Yeah. So being like descriptive and really going into
Yeah.
detail. Mm.
I think so. And for business, it's always like, let's not forget what we're trying to do here. There's
Yeah.
always a universal lesson for everyone. And
Mm.
so look at your audience and say, what am I trying to inspire in them? What is the
Mm.
universal lesson here? It might be that I had a story on something silly, but if I think about the universal lesson and what I'm trying to motivate them to do, it helps me to then add the right details to get
Yeah.
people to connect those dots. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So, with that, with the business side of things, it's more okay. What's the goal? What we're trying to achieve, and then figure it out. So work backwards almost.
Yeah, and I think for the business side, you really like in this day and age, people want to
Mhm.
connect to a human purpose.
Yes.
So you're going to go into like what I've noticed is in times of chaos, crisis, mergers, acquisitions, high moving environments, people, it's often said like people need information. Well, they don't just need information, they need clarity of that information. But here's the rub. The next step is okay, well, leaders assume, well, if you have the clarity, then you're going to have alignment. No.
Yeah. Mm.
In order for you to have alignment, you need trust.
Yeah.
And that is where the story comes to play here because you can be a good writer and you can translate the strategy into a way that people understand. But how do you build that trust to get
Mm.
people to align? Because most
Yeah.
of the time in these environments, people are like, yes, yes, I believe in this company. No, I don't.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you that. So, how do you get them to align is to find out what it is they desire and they love
Yeah. Mhm.
and connect it. And so that's why so many people are really interested in corporate social responsibility
Yeah.
and the purpose of the companies, because through that purpose, they are connected and they know why they're doing their job and they feel actually like they are part of a bigger purpose and that motivates them. And so
Yeah.
that's really important. And that's usually done through storytelling.
Yeah, agree. And I think it's the same thing. It goes in line with, I suppose, management. And when you are a leader, is you need to know what your team's goals are in life and really understand them as people, and then you can obviously help them throughout their career and throughout their challenges, and always relate it back to, okay, well, you said you wanted to achieve this. This is how we're going to do it together. It's the same thing. It's the same thing around building this story around what their goals are, relating it to the business as well.
And Sophie, I think that's important what you're talking about in terms of their
Hmm.
goals. And I'm going
Yeah.
to give you an example. So I was part of a merger in which a smaller company was implementing itself into a very large pharmaceutical company. And I remember the leaders coming and saying, "We told these folks that they're going to keep their jobs, but they're
Yeah.
still not happy, and we plan to keep them. We need them. I don't understand." So, in that circumstance, I think most people would say, just keep drilling them that they're safe, right? But
Yeah.
this is where understanding their goals and nuance is important. So I went in and I discovered that it wasn't that they were upset or not happy because they thought they didn't have their jobs. It
Mm.
was because they had just come from a 300-person company where they had super access to the CEO.
Yeah.
And now they're in this thousand person and they feel lost. They don't feel
Yeah.
like what they say matters. They feel like a cog in the wheel. Now you know what is motivating them in the past and now you know what to through stories or
Yeah.
through behaviors and actions how to motivate them again. So it's also being invested in like learning what their goals are or what it is that they really desire.
That's actually made me think about a situation I've had where you do have to think about that. Change comes all the time. And, companies do acquire other businesses and there will be struggles. You have to understand what the motivations are. And that's something that, yeah, it has just made me think. So thanks for that. I'll
No, and
take
I
that
think
one away.
no, but I think that's really important in business because leaders want you to be more productive and to make more
Yeah.
money. That's the purpose of these mergers. But you forget the human capital aspect of this.
Yeah.
People are highly productive when they're happy.
Yes. Agree.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And going back to yourself and obviously these pivots and almost like really inventing yourself.
Mhm.
And we've spoken before and you said reinventing yourself without starting over pretty much.
Mhm.
You're kind of just continuously, I suppose, progressing maybe
Yeah.
is a way to put it. But what does that actually mean in practice? What do you mean by that?
I mean, for me, I think reinventing yourself means that your career evolves, but your strengths, they come with you. So I think a lot of
Mm,
people think when it comes to inventing themselves that that means that they're starting over, the slate is clean.
yeah.
So I didn't leave journalism and think, well, all of that's useless now. Let's just start over.
Yeah.
Instead, I asked myself, what am I really good at?
Mm,
How can I use that in a new context that also keeps me motivated and fulfilled? What can I do that still aligns with my values and who I am?
yeah.
I liken it to like building a layered cake.
Mm,
Each layer, as you progress in your career, adds like flavor and depth. And so for me, It's journalism. I learned how to quickly sort of build trust, to get people to open up in front of the camera, even during like
Yeah.
their hardest moments, right? And I learned how to tell stories that resonate. And then I go to, and that's the basic layer cake, right? Then I go into agency life and I bring those skills with me. I bring the cake with
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
and I help companies craft stories that get attention in the media.
Yeah.
And then I add that corporate strategy toolkit to the cake. And then
Mhm.
in pharma, I layer on another piece of the cake where I use storytelling to sort of connect that business with the strategy and to human purpose and to motivate teams. And so I sort of see reinvention like this cake. Your career
Yeah.
starts out simple, it's a basic layer cake, and then each layer it becomes much more delicious. It's rich, it has texture, it has flavor, and it's a way more satisfying than anything ever was at the beginning. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like just bring the strengths with you. Don't look at it as leaving them behind.
Yeah. Yeah, and starting fresh, like you say,
Yeah.
you've got skills. What are some of the skills actually? I mean, I think you've kind of touched upon some, but some from like journalism that really took you, into the corporate world.
I think 2 things there are many that I learned from journalism, but I would say that 2 things really stand out as unique for me. Number
Mhm.
1 is asking the right questions. So, I think when you're in crisis communications and you're in, like, high stakes situations, nuance is everything, like I
Yeah.
explained in that story, and as a reporter, I learned to dig deep, ask the right
Mhm.
questions, and so I think that's really important because in that story I shared earlier, that insight really changed how we communicated and led through that integration. So asking the right questions is critical. And then the second thing, and that's a skill that I learned. The second thing is multimedia communications. Like as a journalist, I hated it initially.
Mhm.
I had to learn how to shoot video, how to edit video, how to produce stories. And that skill has been a huge asset, especially now with social
Wow.
media and with storytelling. I have saved companies significant amounts of money and budget with just saying, like, I can do this or I can edit this and then doing it in a way that really or I can produce this corporate video and doing it in
Yeah.
a way that resonates across these different audiences. So I would say it's multimedia communications and then asking the right questions that I really pulled over from journalism that I think are my like sort of secret sauce.
Yeah. It's funny, you probably never realized that you'd be editing videos for corporate businesses as part of your career.
Never. I thought I would escape that.
Yeah.
It's funny. The two things I thought I would escape when I left journalism was like any of that multimedia stuff and traveling and travel business. So yeah, I
Yeah.
was wrong.
So question on that then.
Mhm.
How come you moved away from doing
Yeah.
journalism?
Well, I mean, for me, it was like more of a personal issue. I mean, my children. So the way that journalism works is
Mhm.
you have very small markets all the way to the number one market, which is New York City. And then you could also go to the network, right?
Mhm.
But every 2 years, typically, you are reevaluated. And they're like, they look at you, are you pulling in enough audiences? Do they like you? And your contract is reevaluated. So you might be out of a job every 2 years. And even if you're not out of a job, if you're really good, you want to move up, right? So
Yeah.
there's constant moving. So here I am in Orlando. I want to go to New York City, but then I know after New York City, I want to go to the network. And then what happens in the network? You get sent to war. You get sent
Oh, wow.
at a moment's notice to a school shooting, to here, to there. And I had children at that moment. I had a 3-year-old and one was entering kindergarten. And I said
Mhm.
to myself, this isn't sustainable.
Mhm.
I'm not going to have a life with my children.
Yeah.
So people ask me all the time, "Oh, it was your dream and you must have a lot of regrets." Yes, it was my dream. Zero regrets. My
Yeah.
children are my life. My family is my
Yeah.
life. I have zero regrets.
Mm.
It's
Did
fine.
you find it hard though, like with that shift at the time, like
Yeah.
going, well, what am I going to do now? And I don't know what my next step is. Did you feel
Yeah.
like lost and just, I
Yes,
don't know, confused?
I did.
Mm.
I took 6 months off and
Okay.
I was very lost. But you know what gets you out of being very lost? being home with a 3-year-old. Like, I gotta get out of here. I had one now in kindergarten. I had one who was 3 and
Yeah,
adore him, but I didn't have any interaction with adults. I had gone from this career of like interacting with strangers every day to having
yeah,
no like interactions with a little boy. And it was just a shift that was really hard. So it forced me in a good way to sort of what can I do to balance this, right?
yeah.
Because I want to spend time with my kids, but and so I really thought, okay, what am I going to do? And for me, that next step ended up being, I've had many bosses in my lives that have taken a chance on me, and
Yeah.
I had someone who took a chance on me and hired me as a marketing manager at a startup that did content for healthcare.
Yep.
And she was like, "You know what a journalist is really good at? Content strategy." And
Mm.
she was patient and actually taught me, said, "This is what I think you could do well." And really, she started that career. Her name is Renee. But she started that for me. And she's not the only one who did wonderful things for me, but she really helped me. And I would say that's my advice to people who are looking to
Mm.
reinvent themselves is to
Yeah,
find people who are like genuinely invested in you and they give you the advice of like, because sometimes seeing things from a different perspective is what helps you to see what you can do.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have the same conversation with so many people, obviously working in recruitment. So many people talk to me
Mhm.
about pivoting or, I want to do something new or I've been out of work for 6 months. What would you suggest? My first thing is like your network is so key. Like
Yeah.
who you have around you, or not even who you have around you, who's gonna, a person removed. Can someone introduce you to someone because they're gonna be the ones that help you. It's very hard in this day and age to apply for a job and get a job. You have to go out, network, speak to people, and then you'll hopefully find your way. But like you say, someone just needs to take a chance on you and see what you're able to do. See what
Yeah.
your ability is.
And then guess what? You are then invested in making sure that you don't disappoint them.
Yes.
That's
Mhm.
really critical.
Yeah, I'm the worst at that. I'm always like, I hate disappointing people. I hate disappointing myself, let alone
Yeah,
anyone else. So I'm like, if someone takes a chance on me, I will do you proud. I will
yeah,
do my best. Anyway,
absolutely.
um, so the pivoting piece, and I'm intrigued, and I'm not necessarily about to pivot. I pivoted, 10 years ago now, from obviously dancing, and now went into the corporate world. So that was
Mhm.
that was very different. Unfortunately, I couldn't take anything with me. My dance skills don't really help me when I'm, doing recruitment, but, it's one of those. Who
I
knows?
think you could I mean, I think there's definitely synergies in that.
Yeah.
There's a performance there,
Yes.
in some way
Yeah.
with recruitment.
Yeah, there's something there. But, there's many people pivoting now and, I'm sure that I'll probably have a pivot or 5 in the future.
Yeah,
But women especially often worry that pivoting will make them look unfocused,
no.
unserious. What's your take on that?
I think that not pivoting is actually riskier. I think
Mm.
that pivoting makes you look adaptive, and in this world, adaptive is critical in business. I mean,
Yeah.
the only constant right now in business is change. And
Yeah.
so I would argue that it makes you more valuable to pivot. I mean, take my career. So in my last role, I was elevated to an interim chief of staff role at a large company. And at first glance, you might look at me and say, "What is a former journalist now? How did they get into a role where they're serving as an interim chief of staff at a
Yeah.
pharmaceutical company, being pulled out of communications, doing things like business development and, just, things that even I would have imagined. But when you explain the through line, you need communication skills, you need storytelling skills, you need strategy, you need stakeholder
Mhm.
management. Then it suddenly makes perfect sense. And I think
Mhm.
that's the power of framing a pivot. So the pivot
Yeah.
framing is critical, showing how, going back to that cake, how those layers build on itself
Yeah.
rather than focusing on divergence. Like, focus on signaling your versatility, your resilience, your strategic thinking. Those are qualities that make you more valuable, not less.
Yeah. Completely agree. But it is, you've got to think about the skills that you bring to the table, what you have achieved. I always say sit down, write down everything you've learned, all your skills, all your strengths. And then when you are looking for the next role, think about companies that would appreciate those skills or roles that would require those skills. And then you can kind of pick the route that you want to go down, as well as what you're passionate about, I think is quite important.
Yeah,
You've got to be
very.
passionate.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you have to be passionate about what you do, otherwise, you're not gonna be good at it no matter what.
Mm,
The only other advice I would give is look around at people who are invested in you, whether that's your
yeah.
friends and your family, and ask them
Yes.
what skills you have that stand out to them.
Hmm.
Because I can't tell you how many people have told me that I'm good at something that I had no idea I was good at. "Really? Oh, yes, Karen, I think you could." "Really?" And they're right, but I saw it completely different
Hmm.
because when you can't fix yourself,
Yeah.
you're too close to it. So, I think talking to people who really are well-intentioned for your future is a great start as well.
Yeah, I need to start asking people what I'm good at. I need
Yeah.
some, I need some praise or some skill knowledge. I don't know. Um,
I after I watched the podcast, I was like, "You're good at on camera. You're good at hosting. You're good at this. No, for sure." And your hair
thank
was
you.
amazing that day. So,
Thank you.
which I told you. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, those are things that, you know what? It's the performance.
Yeah.
Going back to your dancing,
Yeah.
there's something about communication through even dancing
Yeah.
because you're in many ways exuding emotion through that communication, and so you do it well on the podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I think I always I'm actually an introvert. People
Mhm.
think that's very strange considering I work in sales. But I'm an introvert, same when I used to dance as well. So I found it really hard to go out there and network as a dancer. And as a dancer, that's what you need to do to try and get into
Yeah.
some of these gigs. Yeah, you can be good,
Mhm.
but you need to know people. So I just struggled with that quite a bit. And I think that's the thing with doing podcasts, doing things like that. I can
Mhm.
utilize my experience because I had to put on a show. I had to turn on the performance every time I got on
Yeah.
stage. And it's the same thing now when I'm working and doing my corporate role is I can pick up that phone and you will think I'm the life and soul of the party. But
Yeah.
actually, I just sit in on Friday night with a cup of tea to do that and have that skill set. And I can be a comedian in whatever situation. And I can, if we have events, happily will take over the ownership and I'll walk around and be that person. But realistically, I'm actually quite quiet. It's something that I've learned throughout my career.
But I think also as a dancer, like, under pressure, you were
Yeah.
like, "I must perform," right? The show
Right.
must go on. So, in many ways, like the
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
here it is. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Lights are on.
Yeah. Think on my feet. Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually talking about that being in like high pressure
Mhm.
environments and moments, obviously, leading communications during like crises and major transformations, that's pretty intense. So
Mhm.
how do you think those like high pressure moments really shaped your leadership?
Well, if there's one thing that I've learned about, high pressure environments, it's that it reveals people's true leadership style. I think there's a quote
Mm,
there from Martin Luther King, something about, the measure of a man is not during times of, I can't remember specifically, but it's really it's the point of it is like during times of crisis when we really see someone's true personality.
yeah.
So I've seen leaders. I've been part of 5 M&As now. So I've seen leaders crumble. I've seen some respond with like harshness. I've seen others sort of ignore issues and say,
Mm,
"I know what I'm doing." But I've also seen amazing leaders, like the great ones, like rise to the occasion, ask for support, navigate challenges with like clarity and more importantly, empathy. I think my foundation as a journalist has been key as well because it taught me that everything in life begins with understanding people on a personal level.
yeah.
So that's how, as a journalist, I secured interviews with like the parents of children who died on September 11th to speak with me, but also gotten people who rarely open up in business to share their full perspective with me. I think ultimately high pressure leadership and journalism share the same core, the ability to listen and then connect under stress.
Mm,
And that is so key. And that's what I think is one of the biggest takeaways. from my experience in these crazy
Yeah.
environments and pivoting. That's where I
Yeah.
was saying, like, being able to be okay with ambiguity is great. And so I think, like I said, I think pivoting is a strength.
Yeah, I would agree, especially if you're doing mergers and acquisitions, because I
Yeah.
mean, that's like fast paced, things are changing and you have to be adaptable. I completely
Yeah.
agree with that. What are some of the challenges that you face though? Like when you were pivoting, like
Mhm.
what did you come across for yourself personally?
So I think the biggest challenge is patience, and I
Mm,
have 0. Like,
me
that is
too.
always like, I am so
Yeah.
fiery, I am
Hmm.
Hispanic, and so I often joke I go from 0 to Hispanic in 2 seconds if need be. So I think patience for me, I think that's also why I've just been thrown into M&A because
Yeah.
you need massive amounts of it. So I think the biggest challenge for me has been patience
Wow.
because I wanna run and everybody else wants to walk, and so
Hmm.
I have to negotiate, "Let's jog."
Yeah.
Or fast walk, you know?
Yeah.
The biggest lesson for me would be, I think specifically in pharma is that, and this could just be generally for anything in business. So in pharma, it's science matters, but the human story matters more. And I would
Okay.
say in business, like anything, whatever it is, insert whatever that business is. But I think the human story always matters more. And I think once you learn that the human story matters more, and I don't care if you're in communications, HR, a CEO, um, a janitor,
Yeah.
a worker at Starbucks, and every role is important in this
Yeah.
world. Once you understand that, everything clicks. When you talk to someone and you know that human stories matter and the connections matter, then I think that's where you have breakthroughs in life.
That makes total sense. And I think that human connection, it is hard. Can you develop it though? Can you work on it? Can
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, just talking to people, I know
Mhm.
it's really hard, especially when you're an introvert. You're thinking, gosh, what am I
Yeah.
going to ask this person? But I think sometimes, like, even no words is important sometimes. If you're
Yeah.
standing next to someone and you don't know them and something happens and you just go, it
Yeah.
starts a conversation, right? You're like,
So true. Yeah.
I think just not like, get rid of the, just like with the same thing I talked about earlier with like, don't be afraid to write. Just, you know, don't be afraid of what you're going to say. Just
Mm.
say anything.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there a little bit because I think that'll help you to understand how to connect with people. I've had people, man, tell me such deep and dark things after only weeks of knowing them in business, just because I exude this, I really care and I want to
Yeah.
connect with you kind of connection. So sometimes you don't even need words with that, I think.
I love that. And
Yeah.
how do you find like your because this is something that I think I've struggled with over the past few years. I think going from the UK to the US, changing my whole life. My career is
Mhm.
still near enough the same, but around like my core identity. And I actually had the crisis of after I left dance, obviously going into the corporate world. It was not
Mhm.
probably until 8 years later I was like, who am I? But how do you kind of navigate life without losing that core identity? Or like, do you feel like you have a core identity? What does that look like?
I mean, first of all, Sophie, I feel like I ask myself that often. I mean, I think we all have that kind of moment where we're like, "Who
Yeah.
am I? What was my purpose?" I've asked myself too many times
Mm-hmm.
that question in 2025. But I think that here's what I've learned: your core has nothing to do with your skill set. I think for me, my identity is tied to my values.
Yeah.
So I anchor myself in my values. I think I can step into new roles and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities without feeling like I'm lost or who I am because I bring my values along with me. So the challenge isn't really becoming someone new, it's
Mm.
bringing yourself into every situation with you. So for
Mhm.
me, I can be in the boardroom or literally playing board games. And
Yeah,
I'm always focused on creating a genuine connection.
yeah,
Am I leading a team, negotiating a deal, or trying to win this, board game? My values guide how I show up. The skills obviously are important when it comes to jobs, but
yeah.
don't forget your values. There was a job that I took on a few years ago, and I only took it on for a few months because when I understood what the actual core premise of the job was,
Mm.
I don't think I dug enough, and when I understood the core premise of the job, it did not align with my values.
Yeah.
It was actually the actual business,
Yeah.
the whole business, so it just didn't it wasn't, like, horrible, it was just it didn't really align with my
Yeah.
values, and I knew at that point that I just wasn't gonna be able to stay there because
Yeah.
even though I could do the skill of communications there, I wasn't aligned to it, so I think this is why purpose is so important to motivate
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's really, I think, more important to think through about what your values are
Yeah.
and the kinds of places that you would absolutely work at and you wouldn't work at,
Yeah.
and then that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I was the same as you actually. I've worked for a business before where my values just didn't align. And I knew
Mm,
that that was the case. And that was actually a time where I was slightly going through a little bit of like a, not an identity crisis, but a bit like, who am I? What's going on?
mhm,
And then I think I realized like it was the values piece. So actually, you've just highlighted exactly the situation I was going through.
mhm.
And it was the case of my identity were the values that at the time weren't necessarily being upheld to because I was in an environment that didn't share the same values. So it was very difficult to do that.
And I think, isn't it funny how your
Mm.
body will tell you?
Yes.
Your body
Mhm.
will tell you,
Yep.
this doesn't feel right," and you
Yeah.
will fight that gut instinct, but it's because at your core identity, your values sit.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's not the skill set because the skill set can be placed in an environment and
Mhm.
you can do it. Like going back to that job, I could do that job. It was very easy for me to do that job, but I did not believe in what the business was doing holistically for society. And in
Yeah.
that case, I just was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think that's important. What about if someone feels, boxed in by their current role or industry? What would you say to someone?
I mean, I'd go back to saying like talk to people that you trust.
Mm.
Um ask them, how do you see my skills transferring to other roles and industries?
Yeah.
Because I think you'd be surprised what you notice.
Mhm.
So I've had people point me in directions I've never considered. I had people before I was a chief of staff, I had people say to me, "You're really good operationally. You should be in a role where you're just trying to fix things
Yeah.
operationally."
Yeah.
3 years later, I'd be in a chief of staff role.
Right.
Um, my mom told me for years, "You need to start a YouTube channel or a podcast." And like most kids, I would don't listen to my mom, but then others started to say that, and then I finally gave it serious thought, and that nudge led me at some point earlier this year to sort of launch, like, a little side project, a
Mhm.
YouTube podcast, and it's not, like, related to my business work, but it was incredibly fulfilling. It opened up this new path,
Yeah.
and I would have never even considered that had my friends not said that. So I think sometimes that outside perspective of people who know you well is
Yeah.
actually more powerful than your own self-assessment.
Agree with that one. And where you are, I suppose, now in your career,
Mhm.
what does reinvention look like for you at this current stage?
Well, I think it's becoming more and more clear to me that everybody needs a story.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in any kind of work that leverages my storytelling and my strategy skills. Like, look, this could be a company that's like raising funds and they need to tell investors like why, like, here's why we're a smart bet. It could be a product launch and that requires like a really compelling narrative that
Yeah.
is going to drive this like high stake adoption for a company. Leadership teams across the globe need stories to align their employees around an M&A vision and strategy. So, and I think even for people who are looking to reinvent themselves, you need a story too. I
Mhm.
was actually thinking about this the other day. Um, I had read this book about Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Love
And I
him.
thought it was
Yep.
yes, I love him. And he went from wrestling to, like, blockbuster movies, right? And at first, I feel like that's a pretty dramatic thing, but the through line is clear. He connects well with audiences, he shows relentless discipline, and you
Yeah.
need that in both of those careers. So, he didn't abandon who he was. He built on that foundation, and that reinvention is believable. So to me, I just think that, everybody needs a story,
Yeah.
and so wherever that fits and aligns with my values is where I will go.
I love that. I love how kind of open you are to
Yeah.
whatever's next and open to anything.
Well, that's part of my 2025 strategy as which, was ending obviously, but I had said to myself that this year I would be really open
Yeah.
to just saying yes to anything even if I thought didn't make sense. And so that's been great for me because it's really helped me to put it this way, Sophie. I think if we were talking maybe 6 months ago, I wouldn't have the same answers I have now. I've progressed so much, and it's
Mhm.
from really taking a look at inside and saying, like, what is this reinvention about? And I think that's where I concluded that there was never a reinvention, it was an evolution, you know?
Love that. Mic
Yeah.
drop on that one.
Mic
Yes.
drop.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. No, completely agree. And I think it's crazy how far you can come within a year. I
Right.
was, same journey. If you spoke to me a year ago, I probably would be, I was going to say crying, maybe not crying. It wasn't that bad, but I would just be in a very different headspace. Like a lot of things were different. And this year, I think, my whole life has changed for the better and things are just heading in the
Yeah.
right direction. So it's crazy how far you can come and things can really turn around quickly.
And I think it's okay to tell the women who are listening, it's okay to cry. And I
Oh,
may or may not have cried this year,
oh yeah. Who hasn't?
Yeah. I mean, but I just think that that's okay too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very emotional journey to, the your career is an emotional journey that you're
Yeah.
very invested in, and sometimes it can be very frustrating or whatever. But yeah, I think that
Agree.
what I've learned the most is to really invest in time and to be patient with myself until I
Yeah.
got to the right story of like what made sense for me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. So we have a closing tradition on this podcast.
mhm,
Now I've jazzed it up a little bit. I'm adding a few
okay,
more questions in.
love it.
So a little bit of like a quick fire. There's only a
Okay,
few. So yeah, excited to see what your answers are. We're just gonna go for it.
okay.
So, first question is, what's your superpower at work that people wouldn't know from your resume?
Um, I think it's spotting I think people would know that I spot high risk situations that others might not miss, but I think what they don't know is that oftentimes I will play like I don't know
Mhm.
the situation because
Yeah.
strategically it makes sense. So oftentimes I watch them and as they revel in pulling the wool over my eyes and I'm like, yeah, but there's a strategy behind that.
Yeah.
I think people would might well, those who tried to manipulate me might be disappointed in learning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love that. So you
yeah.
know what you're doing. Don't pull the wool over my eyes.
Well, it's more like, I think, like, I'll give you an example. So,
Mhm.
oftentimes, like, sometimes somebody might come to me and they might complain to me about a leader, and I know that their intention is to they think I'm going to then go and tell that leader what they're complaining
Yeah.
about, and that's their lazy way of, like,
Yeah.
using me as a resource, right? So, they may think that that's what I'm going to do, but then that might instill an instinct in me to help coach them for the next few months to give them the tools they need to communicate that themselves, right? But in the
Yeah.
meantime, I'm like, yeah, I don't know that you're trying right now to manipulate the situation. So things like
Yeah.
that, where it makes more strategic sense to like help build them than
Agree.
make it easy for them.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Agree. Love that. Next one. What's the most unserious thing that helps you survive serious corporate life?
Oh God, I love having fun. I mean, that's one thing I think
Mhm.
it's hard to explain on a resume. So one
Yeah.
time we had this mandatory team bonding competition, and the office was split into two groups, and I waged a full on reconnaissance campaign, stood on desks, used
Mhm.
binoculars to gather intel before this event, and it was ridiculously silly. It was a competition, it was like a sports competition, but I think a little playfulness goes a long way in building relationships and being silly. So I am constantly trying to have fun at work.
I love that. Yeah, it can be so boring. So
Yeah.
you need to come work with me. We'd have so much
Yeah.
fun.
We would.
Yeah. Okay, final one,
Okay.
which everyone's heard before, but what is one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
Can you stop worrying so much about yourself, Karen, and just shift that energy
Yeah.
towards reflection? Take a
Mm,
moment, appreciate everything you've done, take a look back, be proud of those accomplishments. Get to know yourself better without all of that pressure
yeah.
and let that self awareness guide you.
Do you do like yearly goals and stuff? Is that something that you set for yourself?
I have. I actually create a vision board every
Yeah,
year.
me too.
All right.
Yeah.
So I create a vision board, and I can tell you, I have checked off every box except for one. So
Wow.
I'm hoping it happens before the end of the year, but literally it's all manifested towards me. I'm more of a visual learner, so I don't write them down.
Yeah.
I just slap them on a board and I look at them and they happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very important for me.
Yeah. I agree on the vision board.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's maybe a longer term, 5 year, but we're ticking them off as we go.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I
It
appreciate
was
you
a
taking the
pleasure.
time today. It was so
Yes, it
much
was a
fun.
pleasure. Yes, it was a pleasure. And thank you so much for taking the time and for asking such thoughtful questions and for your interaction. It's been wonderful.